I said there are three characteristics of a very, very effective teacher. Number one, extremely good classroom manager. The second characteristic of a good, effective master teacher is good, effective teachers know how to teach for mastery. Good, effective teachers do not cover subject matter. And so what I want to talk about right now is how to teach for mastery. Chapter 22, how to get your students to do their assignments. Chapter 23, how to get your students to pass their tests. And when they do, how you and I grade the students. This is what I would like to do. I would like to do four very simple things. Number one, I'd like to share with you what's an ineffective assignment. Number two, I would like to share with you what's a good assignment. Number three, I will throw up on the graphic screen an example of what is a good, effective assignment. And then step number four, here's the good news. I can show you in 10 seconds flat how to write one of those effective assignments. Here we go. Step number one, this is a bad assignment. This is an ineffective assignment, i.e., class, your assignment for this week is Chapter 7. I'll give you a test Friday covering everything in Chapter 7. Now, moms of the world, pops of the world, you love your children. You're sitting down there at the dinner table and you say to this child of yours, I love you, I want to help you. What are you studying in school? And your child says, Chapter 7. Would you mind telling me what that means? What does Chapter 7 mean? What am I supposed to know? What am I responsible for? What does Chapter 7 mean? Nothing. Page 404 to 413, what does that mean? Nothing. Question 9 to 19, what does it mean? Nothing. Moby Dick, Civil War, Long Division, weather, what does it mean? Nothing. That's not an assignment. A bad assignment is when the teacher announces to the class what the teacher plans to cover. Let me explain. This is what most teachers do. They sit down the night before and they say, what am I going to cover? What am I going to cover? What am I going to cover? What video am I going to show? What worksheet am I going to have them do? What chapter am I going to have them do? We cover. And then you run into this teacher the very last week of school and the teacher says, I made it. I covered it all. Just because a teacher covers does not guarantee learning. You see, teaching or learning has absolutely nothing to do with what the teacher covered. Learning has absolutely nothing to do with what video the teacher shows. Learning has to do with what the student accomplishes. This is a good assignment. A good assignment is when you tell the student at the beginning of the assignment what you want the student to accomplish or master or achieve at the end of the assignment. In other words, you teach with the end in mind. This is how it is done. The night before, please don't sit down and say, what am I going to cover? What am I going to cover? What video am I going to show? Please don't do that. The night before, you sit down and you say, what is it I want my students to learn? What is it that I want my students to accomplish? I'll be even more specific. Music teachers, you sit down and you say, what is it that I want my students to sing? Math teachers, you say, what is it that I want my students to calculate? Phys ed teachers, you say, what is it that I want my students to perform? What is it you want from the students? What do you want them to learn? What do you want them to accomplish? You write that down. Then the next thing I want you to do is write it down, but not in a paragraph. Write it down as single sentences. And then step number 3, please write those single sentences in language so easy to understand that even the parents understand the assignment. And if necessary, even translate into another language if necessary, so the parents will understand the assignment. And here we go with the last step. Duplicate those sentences and give it to them. Why make it a mystery? Now they know. Now they know. They know what you want from them, and they won't fight it. In fact, they've been begging us for years, my fellow colleagues. You ever heard them? Mr. Wong, what are we responsible for? Mr. Wong, is this stuff important? Mr. Wong, do I take notes on this? Mr. Wong, will it show up on the head? Mr. Wong, Mr. Wong, Mr. Wong. They've been begging us for years to tell them what's on the assignment. And what do teachers do? Chapter 7, question 18 to 19. That's not an assignment. A good assignment is when you tell the student up front what you want the student to perform or master at the end of the assignment. Duplicate those things and give it to the students. And my students love it. They call it Wong's no mystery approach. They all know what I want them to master. I teach for mastery. My class is mastery learning, not mystery learning. And so in my classroom, there's no mystery. And that is why this person said, education is not a process of putting the learner under our control. Rather, education is the process of putting the student in absolute control of his or her own learning. Now watch how it works. Watch how my students are now going to be in absolute control of their own learning. This is what I give my students. I say to my students, this is how one of Mr. Wong's assignments looks like. When you walk into Mr. Wong's classroom, you will get an assignment that looks like that. You'll get a series of sentences, and it is called a study guideline. Why is it called a study guideline? Because I am your guide. I'm going to guide you through this assignment. I said, this is your guide for chapter 23. And since I'm going to tell you up front what I want you to master, you are now in absolute control of your own learning. That's the beautiful thing about this system. And I say to my students, you see that thing on the left-hand side? It's a map. Now let me share with you why I have a map up there, because I'm trying to share a concept with you. If I want you to go somewhere, I give you a map, right? Of course, Mr. Wong. Why? Because a map tells me where to go, tells me how to get there. It guides me there. Some of you people go to church. Now, when you go to church, what do you get when you walk in? Well, we get an order of worship. What's an order of worship? It tells me what hymn to sing, what verse to read. You don't give me an agenda, I won't know what to do at a meeting. You don't give me an order of worship, I won't know what to do at church service. And some of you are sent to go shopping. Now, when you go shopping, what do your parents give you? They give me a shopping list, Mr. Wong. Why? Because the shopping list tells me what to bring home, what brand to buy, what price to pay, what sale to look for. That's it, kids. Before each and every assignment, Mr. Wong will give you a map. Mr. Wong will give you an order of worship. Mr. Wong will give you a shopping list that tells you up front what you are responsible for demonstrating mastery of. And as I say, the students love it. I can show you in 10 seconds flat how to write those sentences. But before I do that, I want to jump ahead to the test. Now, I know this doesn't make sense, but it will in a second. I want to jump ahead to the test. I would like to show you how an effective teacher writes a test. I say to my students, you're going to get a test tomorrow, and I'm going to explain to you how Mr. Wong writes a test. Now, I'm not teaching to the test. I'm simply explaining to you how I construct a test. And I would like you to look up on the wall, and you will see examples of tests on the wall. There's no mystery in here. Now, you see, my fellow colleagues, you are in trouble when the students ask you, Mr. Wong, what do your tests look like? Are they written? Do I have to sing? Do I have to build something? Mr. Wong, are they multiple choice? Mr. Wong, are they fill? How many questions are you going to write? When they ask you how you construct a test, you're in trouble. But not in my classroom. My students understand how the test is constructed. They even know what the test looks like. I say, there are my tests. They're on the wall. That's what they look like. And if you want a copy, I'll be happy to give you a copy so you know what they look like. And not only that, look at the ones on the wall. Every single one has an A or an A+. These are past exams of former students. In other words, I firmly believe that not only will you understand how to study for the test, but you too, like former students, will all get A's and AB's. What a wonderful way to set up the class. Now, I say to my students, I'm going to explain to you how Mr. Wong constructs a test so that you will have you won't be in any way scared to take a test. When you walk in tomorrow, this is what my test will look like. And so tonight, I want you to go home, and I want you to take that piece of paper, and I want you to lay it down next to your song sheet. I want you to lay it down next to your syllabus. I want you to lay it down next to whatever it is your teacher is teaching you. And I want you to study that piece of paper. And I absolutely guarantee that when you walk in tomorrow, every single question on the test will have been written to those sentences. Now, just between you and I and the fence post, my fellow classroom teachers, I think all of you know what's up there. But I only use the word sentences with my students. I say you are responsible. You are in control of your own learning for those sentences. But between you and I and the fence post, I think most of you know what's on the top graphic. Those sentences are called criteria. It's a beautiful word. What's the criteria of your assignment? Not video, not book. What are you trying to accomplish? What's the criteria of your assignment? What do you want them to learn? Those are called criteria. Now, if any of you are in technology education or industrial arts, you call them specifications or specs. And some of you call them objectives. It really makes no difference what you call them. All I'm simply saying is I tell my students up front what they are responsible for learning, what they are responsible for demonstrating achievement of. And so I tell them that when you show up the next day, every single question on the test will have been written to those sentences. And that is why, my fellow teachers, what you see on the bottom graphic is called a criterion reference test. What's a criterion reference test? A criterion reference test is a test in which every single question refers back to pre-stated criteria. Now, let me share with you how an effective teacher writes a test. The very first thing a teacher does is to read criteria number 1. And then that teacher then writes 2 or more questions specifically directed to criteria number 1. And if you're special ed or kindergarten, that's all you have, 1 criteria, and it's not even written. But if you have more than 1 criteria, then the whole thing is simply repeated. You read criteria number 2, and you write 2 or more questions to criteria number 2. You read criteria number 3, you write 2 or more questions to criteria number 3. And when you finish all the criteria and all the matching questions to the criteria, you have finished writing the test. And so the only thing now that I need to explain to you is the criteria at the top graphic. Why? Because the criteria on the top graphic control 2 things. Number 1, what they are responsible for turning in as homework, and number 2, how I write the test. That's how important it is. And I can show you in 10 seconds flat how those sentences at the top graphic are written. Every single one of those sentences at the top graphic begins with a verb. Please do not reinvent the wheel, because all of these verbs are known. They're in 6 categories or 6 floors in a 6-story building, and that's why there's a roof at the top. Because what I'm trying to say to you is the higher you climb up in the building, the higher the order of thinking skills. And so make every endeavor to use verbs out of floor 4, 5, and 6. Her name is Jan Tynan. She walks around her classroom with that chart laminated. And as she lectures, as she leads class discussion, as she asks questions, no matter what she does in her classroom, she looks at the chart. And she endeavors to use as many as possible out of categories 4, 5, and 6. She even ticks them off with a felt pen. At the end of the day, she wipes them off. And then she takes that chart home. And when she writes assignments, writes activities, writes worksheets, writes tests, she looks at that chart and endeavors to use as many verbs out of 4, 5, and 6, so she is using higher order thinking skills. Now, this is how a criteria is written. All you have to do is pluck a verb off the list and complete the sentence. It is that simple. For instance, list. Now, where did the verb list come from? Category number 1. Social studies teachers, will you please stop this garbage? Chapter 27, will you please tell your students, I want you to list the 17 reasons why Cornwallis was defeated at Yorktown. Tell them, don't make it a mystery. Now they know what you want from them. List the 8 import products of Brazil. Tell them. List the steps of the scientific method. Now they know what you want them to master. Now you know the criteria, what you're trying to accomplish. Now, how do you know if they've mastered? How do you know they've learned? Very simple. Write a question like the following are some steps of the scientific method. If the student answers the question correctly, you and I know something. We're the doctor. We're the engineer. We know the student has mastered. We know the student has achieved. We know the student has learned. So at that point, what do? Do not penalize the student by giving the student more work. You give the student enrichment work, such as what? Computer software to play with, books to read, magazines to read, a poem to read, a puzzle to solve, a game to play. Or better yet, go help a support buddy who hasn't learned it, and we can all learn. But what if the student missed the question? What if the student missed the question? What if the student missed the question? I know something. I know the student has not learned. I know the student has not achieved. I know the student has not mastered. So at that point, what I need to do now is to go back and remediate. I need to go back and give corrective action. I need to prescribe instruction. Just like a doctor prescribes medicine to cure, I need to prescribe some learning for remediation and correction. Now, how do I remediate? How do I prescribe instruction? Let's go back to what you just saw. In the left-hand margin, I see 3-1B. Now, what does 3-1B mean? It means that question number 6 was written to criteria number 3. Now, you understand that. Every single question must be written to a pre-stated criteria. Therefore, if the student misses question number 6, I know that the student has not demonstrated mastery of criteria number 3. Therefore, student, I want you to go back into chapter 1, section B, Get your grandfather to help you. Get your rabbi to help you. Get your minister to help you. Get your priest to help you. Get your mother to help you. Get your support buddies to help you. Get me to help you. We are all here to help you. And when you feel you can demonstrate mastery of criteria number 3, come on back up to Mr. Wong, and Mr. Wong will give you some more test questions to see if you can demonstrate mastery. And using this system, I know whether my students have learned or not. For you see, the most important thing is you teach for mastery. You do not cover material. When you cover, the students learn nothing. You're just covering because you want to cover. When the student learns, that's the only way you know whether they have learned or not. There is no relationship with what the teacher covers. And so in my classroom, what I do is I demand results. You see, my students all know the results of my lessons. They all know up front what the results are. And after I give them the results, I then teach them to perform to those results. And with that, you have a very, very effective classroom. Now, please, before I go any further and show you how I grade, do not walk out of here and misunderstand that I said you are to write multiple choice questions. I never said that. All I said is that in a classroom of an effective teacher, you sit down and you tell the students what you want them to master, what you want them to learn. You tell them up front what you want them to achieve. You may want them to sing something, you may want them to build something, you may want them to perform something. And using that, you'll be very successful. And so my students now do their assignments. They take their tests. And now it's time for me to grade them. Now, how do I grade my students? I need to share with you that I do not grade on the curve. And I'll share with you why I do not grade on the curve. See, grading on the curve is by far the most damaging thing we've ever done to students in education. You see, all grading on the curve ever tells you as a teacher is that some students do better than other students. I could have told you that before the test. In fact, I could even tell you 5 years, high school teachers, 5 years before the student even walks in your classroom to a 90% degree accuracy, what grade the student will get in your classroom. How do you know that, Harry Wong? Oh, very easy. A man by the name of Benjamin Bloom many years ago took 1,000 third graders, plotted them on a curve, tracked down as many as he could. 4 years later, when they were in the 7th grade, plotted them on a curve, and guess what? 90% of them fell on the same position on the curve. Tracked down as many as he could. 4 years later, plotted them on a curve, and 90% of them fell on the same position on the curve. In other words, high school teachers, I can tell you, when that student is way back there in the 5th or 6th grade, to a 90% degree accuracy, what grade the student will get in your classroom. So why? Why do you persist in grading them on the curve and reminding half of them year after year after year, test after test after test, that half of you are dumb, stupid, below average, and at risk? What are we trying to do? You see, I do not grade my students. Well, Harry, if you do not grade your students, then what do? My students earn their own grades. Let me show you how it is done. Remember what Douglas Brooks said now, number 5. How will I be graded? So I tell my students, this is how you will be graded. I don't grade. You earn your own grades, and this is how it's done. I will tell you at the beginning of the assignment what you are responsible for. At the end of the assignment, I will give you a test. Now, in my case, it happens to be a written test. Now, if you get 95% of those questions correct, you earn an A. Pick any number you want, teacher. You get 88%, you earn a B. You get 77%, you earn a C. In my class, my students earn the grades. I do not give grades. For you see, the role of a teacher is not to grade students. And yet we have these teachers. First, they don't know how to write a test. That's the first crime. And then they grade them on a curve. They string everybody out on the curve. And then they go home at night and they chop the curve. And they go, And then they show up in class the next day into the faculty workroom. Hey, anybody want to see my grade distribution last night? I only gave out 1 A. Well, whoopee. Who are you? Some supreme being that you gave out 1 A and 3 B's? And the students pretty soon say, forget it. Why bother studying? When I have no control over my own learning, when I'm at the mercy of that teacher who sits there in front of a television set and goes home, 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 home. When the teacher is more interested in pointing out to a whole lot of us what we don't know. And we have these teachers. They are more interested in pointing out to the students what they don't know. Then in my classroom, they are rewarded for earning what they do know. And these students say, forget it. Why bother when I have no control of my own learning? So you see, in my classroom, I do not give grades. See, the main role of a teacher is to help every single student reach the highest possible level of achievement. And that's no platitude. Keep your eye focused on that very last word, achievement. How do I help my students reach the highest possible level of achievement? It's very easy. Now, here are 2 slides to summarize the assignment process. When I write an assignment, my students are given a list of these achievements. When? At the beginning of the assignment. And now that they have a list of these achievements, they are now responsible for accomplishing these achievements. If students know what they are to achieve, they will more willingly learn what you want them to achieve. That's common sense. Now, here are 2 more slides that will summarize the testing process. There is only one reason for writing a test. There is only one reason for writing a test, and that is to find out whether the students can demonstrate mastery of the criteria. Therefore, the following are not reasons for writing a test. Non-reason, number 1, passage of time. 2 weeks have gone by, time for another test. That is never the reason for a test. Non-reason, number 2, passage of subject matter. 3 chapters have gone by, time for another test. That is not the reason for a test. Non-reason, number 3, points. Don't ever write a test because you need points. And please laugh at number 4, because if you don't laugh at number 4, I'm going to feel so guilty that I'm the only bird in the world who's ever done this. Don't ever write a test long enough to kill the entire period the next day. Phew, boy, am I glad you're laughing. I thought I was the only one who did it. I used to sit there and write the test. And after I finished writing the test, I would say to myself, gee, I wonder if this test is long enough to kill the entire period tomorrow. I don't think it is. Let's write 3 more questions that'll kill the entire period. That is never the reason for writing a test, to kill the entire period the next day so you and I can survive. And non-reason number 5, they are called gotcha questions. Do you know what gotcha questions are? They are questions from Mars, from left field. They are trick questions, hard questions, designed to trip students over so that they will fail. Ha, 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 ha. That is not the reason for writing a test, to trip students. There is only one reason for writing a test, and there it is, to find out whether the students can demonstrate mastery of the criteria. Therefore, if you and I do not tell them at the beginning of the assignment what they are responsible for demonstrating mastery of, number 1, don't expect them to turn in the homework. And number 2, don't expect them to pass the test. Therefore, once you have written the criteria, the rest is duck soup. Why? Because the criteria govern 2 things. Number 1, they govern what questions you will write on the test. And number 2, how many questions you will write on the test. And so, this is an ineffective teacher. And I'll show you the effective teacher in a second. This is an ineffective teacher. An ineffective teacher is someone who just covers the textbook, who teaches chapters out of a book. And the truly ineffective teacher is the one who just finds busy work for the students to do so you can babysit and keep them quiet and practice crowd control. On the other hand, this is a truly effective teacher. In the classroom of a truly effective teacher, the students are learning towards a set of criteria. They know up front what they are responsible for demonstrating mastery of. Now, here we go, teachers. Now comes our job. Now what do we do? Now that they know, what do we do? This is what we do. I'm not against videos. I'm just simply saying that when you show a video, make sure that video is shown for one reason only, to teach the criteria. I'm not against worksheets. I'm just simply saying that when you have them do a worksheet, that worksheet must be done for one reason only, to teach that criteria. And if you decide the lecture must be done for one reason only, to teach that criteria. If you have them do a reading assignment, the reading assignment must be done for one reason only, to teach that criteria. Therefore, in the classroom of a very effective teacher, the students are learning towards, and the teachers are teaching towards, the same identical criteria. You have a situation like that, and you have a winner of a classroom in which both the teachers and the students are achieving success. And so what we need to do in our classrooms, my fellow teachers, is we need to make a massive change from a curriculum of coverage where the teacher just covers. And we need to change to a curriculum of mastery, accomplishment, and learning, in which the students know up front what they are to master, and the teacher is not preoccupied with what I am going to cover. Let me share with you how someone has implemented this. Her name is Judy Johnson. She is a kindergarten teacher in Minnesota. And she says, Harry, I decide exactly what it is I want my students to know or be able to do. And then I show them how to do it. We practice together. They practice on their own. And then I test them the same way we practice. As we begin each new unit, the first thing I do is I tell my students what they will be learning and how they will show me that they have learned it. In other words, how they will be tested. This way, we all know exactly what we are learning and how we will know when and if we have learned it. There are no secrets as to what is expected of them. When I do this, they all succeed. In my class, test is not a bad word. It is something my students look forward to. It is their chance to show me what they have learned. They can't wait for their turn to be tested, because after all the instruction and practice, the test is the easiest part. At least, that's what my students tell me. They beg me to test them. They even stand in line waiting for their turn to show me what they have learned. And that's a kindergarten teacher. Now, a high school teacher stops me and says, Harry, I know exactly what she's doing. I understand this concept. I do it at the high school level, and this is my way of doing it. When I walk in to teach a unit or a topic, I throw up on the screen, I throw up on the chalkboard an entire outline of my unit or in my entire topic, and it stays up there during the entire teaching of the unit or topic. And then my students see what they're responsible for. My students are learning to the outline. My students are learning to the outline, and it's always posted. And Harry, when I teach to the outline. I don't cover. I teach to the outline. They are learning to the outline. And when I finish the outline, I write the test. And when I write the test, every single question that I write on the test is written to the criteria on that outline. No mystery. Everyone knows what they are to learn. Most important, the teacher knows what he or she is trying to teach. And when you know what you're trying to teach, rather than covering chapter 17, your students will succeed. For you see, if you don't know what you want them to learn, how will you know when they've learned it? But if they know what they are to learn, they will more readily learn it because they know what they are to learn. And that's why this man wrote me this letter, and he said, Harry, on the home front, I had an absolutely fantastic first semester. He said, I worked very hard on my study guidelines, the worksheets, and the criterion reference test system that you described. And I got absolutely fantastic results from my high school seniors on the semester exam. They averaged 84% on the semester exam. Unheard of around here. Now here is a man very, very proud that his class averaged 84%, as opposed to the ineffective teachers who delight in seeing catching kids at what they do not know and only giving out 1A and failing half the class. This man was very, very proud that his class averaged 84% on the semester exam. Of course they would, because they all knew what they were supposed to study for, work hard on, and learn. And as I said, he said, I never got this before. Thank you for showing me this method. Now, if you like what I just said about lesson mastery or learning for mastery, as opposed to mystery learning, when I wave my hand, I want you to say own it, which means you're going to go back and try this. You're going to go back and see if you can do this. Whether it's Julie, the kindergarten teacher, or a high school teacher, it's the same. Are we all ready? Here we go. Once more, please. Thank you.